Okay, recording in progress. So one thing that I just wanted to say is as we're going through here, if you want to, Jackie will be monitoring the chat and interrupting me. If you have questions as we go along, please type them in the chat so you don't forget. There may be some opportunities as we go through here to talk about some of the things that are facing you. You know, it's interesting, this title. I love this. The Big Shift. And it's a shift in so many ways. I have to say, Thaddeus, I was a little bit surprised with the tie, the shirt and tie. That's one of the big shifts. I've been on webinars and Zoom calls and all kinds of things with lawyers that typically were in three-piece suits and we're wearing t-shirts now. So it's always, I had to smile when I saw his shirt and tie because I thought, wow, he dressed up for this. And I guess I did too. But you can't see what I've got on my feet or my legs, right? So that's one of the big shifts. And there's so many of them. Today we're going to talk about so many different things: recruiting, retention, compensation, wages, the future of work in general, remote work, and all the paradigm shifts that go with that. A little about me. One of the things that I dearly have loved, and I'm hoping, Thaddeus and Nyana, that we can get back in Jacksonville, as the Emerging Leader Program. I was the first instructor here about 11 years ago for that program, which is an SBA program that they brought to different cities to help emerging companies that were trying to move from stage 1 to stage 2. Love that program. The last time we did it here was a couple years ago. I am an entrepreneur myself. I have 2 businesses. One is a human resources company called Dynamic Corporate Solutions. Soon we're going to have to take that 38 years and make it 39. Every time I see that slide, it's kind of scary. But you know, that was our mothership, was the human resources consulting company. And I also purchased a business, a staffing company, Idea Recruitment. So I have those 2 businesses that I run currently, DCSI, and it's been quite a ride. And of course, COVID was quite a ride too. And thanks to the many programs that the SBA had that helped small businesses like me and you, we're still here. And so that's good news. So enough about me, and let's get on to what's happening in the world. So, okay, I have to wait for my slide to catch up here. So what are we dealing with? I mean, I guess, you know, I was just thinking about it the other day. You know, we thought 2021, oh gosh, we're going to be over some of this stuff, but it's new stuff. You know, last year we had all kinds of things happening, and this year, new things. All these challenges as employers that we have to deal with. We still have the pandemic, you know, when we thought it was getting better with Delta, you know, then we had Delta. And now I hear there's some kind of Delta 4 or something. What else is coming with the pandemic? So that keeps on going on. Working from home, like I said, you know, I'm work most days in flip-flops and shorts. And it's a new world. Having employees that want to work from home and dealing with that. The changing priorities, that's another big shift, and we're going to talk about that. Safety concerns, our own safety, the safety of our employees, our competition for talent. That in itself is a huge crisis that many organizations are facing right now, not having the employees they need. If you're an entrepreneur and you're in a growing business, that has to be at the top of your list. Pay is going up. We're going to talk about that. Where are we going to find the people we need in order to be successful? And we're moving, everything is moving at the speed of light. I mean, everything's moving quickly. It's interesting. One of my staff put on my sheet here, rare historical event. Now, where have you heard that before? I guess from the standpoint that we could never have predicted all of this. Or could we? Kind of like COVID, we've been talking, especially in the HR world. I teach a certification class for HR people. It's been in the curriculum for the last 20 years about pandemics and how companies need to be prepared for that. So is it really rare? Are these things really rare, or they build on each other? So we're going to talk about all of that today. So all these changes, this big shift, whether it be in mentality or with the way business is done, that leads us to be either ready or not ready. And ready is where we need to be. And we need to be planning for our future. You know, you learn that in business school. You kind of learn it by the seat of your pants as an entrepreneur. You know, I'm doing my strategic planning for next year right now. How can I do that? I can't use, we had a big discussion about this yesterday. Should we use 2019 history to base our plans for 2022? I don't think we can. So instead of doing a 3-year plan, we're doing a 1-year plan, and we're going to do it differently because things have shifted. And but we have to be ready. And all of you are smart because you care, and you're here to think about what are those things I do need to think about. So we're really going to talk about 4 big areas today between now and 6 p.m. We're going to talk about the shift in the way people think and the way you need to think. The way hiring, talent pools, employees, that big shift. The impact on pay. And it's a huge impact. And how are you going to address the issue? How are you going to address it with new people? How are you going to address the compression issues with existing staff? And then work just in general. It's interesting. We were talking a few days ago about how for the last 5 years, the nature of work or the way jobs are designed has been a key strategic issue on the top list of HR trends. And we kind of forgot, although I think we forgot about a lot of things during COVID, but now it's, you know, rearing its head, and we've got to look at job design, how we have jobs designed, the reskilling of the workforce, and what that future of work looks like. And we will address that to a certain extent today. So let's talk about shifting how we think. What do I mean by that? And I see there's some chats in here. I don't know if that's people sharing. Okay, how about if everybody puts into the chat what you think I mean by shift how we think? I'll give you a minute to do that. So I'm going to shout these out as we go. Innovate, adapt to change your current mindset, more creative, think outside the box. We have to adapt to the change because things are different. Aha, Elizabeth Tate. Love this one. Stop thinking about going back to normal. So, you know, these big events that we've had in the United States, 9/11, we have these very large events, and everybody, if you remember 9/11 and all, I can't wait for it to go back to normal. And I know we felt that in the pandemic, and you may still be, I should have my mask, but it's over there, so I'm not going to go get it. But I don't want to wear a mask anymore. You know, I want it to go back to normal. But will it? Will it ever go back to normal? Everything changes, and I know I'm just as stuck in my ways as anybody else with my routines and not wanting to change my routines. Although now I'm in a routine to wear a mask. I have it hanging on my shifter in my car. Think about that the other day. I don't know if that's good for the shift thing, but anyway, so there's a shift. I'm hanging a mask on there and I don't go anywhere without putting it on. And I'm just in a routine now. And I guess I really don't understand people that don't want to wear them, because it's just like routine. It's my new routine. And it's interesting. I actually went in Publix last night and I forgot my mask. And I was like, the minute I walked through the doors, I felt naked. And I had to go back to my car and get my mask. But so shifting how we think about, in this context, how we think about business, how we're going to get business done through employees especially, that's going to be critical to your success in the future. Yeah, now somebody else, I guess it's Elizabeth again, because everybody can see it. I'm having a hard time dressing up to go out of the house. I just had that discussion with somebody this afternoon. You know, I've been wearing shorts most of the year. I had when it got cool, I was wearing my sweats. I don't even really get dressed up for my business calls. You know, I just have a shirt on and that's it, you know, just a regular shirt. I used to wear a jacket everywhere I go, and dress pants and dress shoes and all those things. I'm not sure what's going to happen with all that. I walk in my closet. I don't know if you all are that way, but, and I go, God, I got a lot of clothes and I've only been wearing this section of clothes since March of 2020. What a waste. So we don't know what's going to happen with that. And we have to be open to that. We have to be open to adapting to whatever's happening. And as entrepreneurs, it's interesting. We did a survey of our employees, and that's one of the things an employee said, is that our ability to be nimble and to shift very rapidly is part of the reason they like working for us. And I think part of success. And I try to talk about that with entrepreneurs, that you need to be able to be nimble. So when we're talking about this mind shift, it's your mind that needs to change. How you look at talent and staffing and how you're doing your jobs. We had a client conversation last week that was very frustrating. It was a COO of a logistics company, really big company. And we were talking about staffing, and I had made the comment that we need to be flexible about meeting candidates when they can come in for interviews. And this guy says to me and the other people on the call, if they want a job, they'll come when we want them to. So if we were in a room of people, you all would be laughing. I mean, that's not the way things work anymore. I mean, that might have been okay in 2019, but it's not okay now. And if you don't change that mentality, you're not going to have any candidates, because they're going to go to somebody that's more accommodating, that's willing to come in on a Saturday or after hours, so they don't have to leave their existing job and lose money to come interview with them for a chance to work for their wonderful organization. So a lot of shifts there. Even how the work is done, the way you do business, those are all things that you need to be open to and think about shifting as we move through this. Let's talk a little bit about what we learned during the pandemic. Well, it's interesting, and I'll pick on my sister. My sister has her own business. All her people come into the office and work there, and she didn't have remote capability. We've always in our business let our consultants work from home or client sites or their car, right? So we were already set up. So on March, whatever day it was, 15th or whatever, that Monday morning, everybody just worked from home. We were all set up. We didn't really have to do anything. We just didn't go back to the office, and we were able to work. It took my sister 2 or 3 weeks to get everybody set up remotely, and she lost productivity. So planning is critical for contingencies, and we know that. We're pretty good around here at planning for hurricanes. I know we're in a flood watch right now. I was thinking about that when Thaddeus was talking. You know, we're good about natural disasters, but there's other things that can happen to your business. And we found out a lot of that. In order to be resilient, and a lot of people went out of business, we have to plan for it. Communication is essential with customers, employees, management. We have to have systems in place to communicate, and we have to do it. Of course, people that we have on our team, the staff and leaders who embraced all this change, they were our MVPs during all this, and still are. The ones that don't give you a hard time about everything, the ones that you know, all do it, that volunteer. The other thing we found out, especially in 2020 when we were going through, is DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. Employees want to talk about it, and we need to talk about it, and we need to be prepared to discuss diversity issues with our teams. And as we saw in, I guess it was June of 2020, with what was happening in the country, it was critical to be prepared for that. We saw basically, we've always been pitching, you know, diversity programs as a product, right, in our company, and getting very little people buying. And then it just kind of exploded after June of 2020. And sometimes it takes something in order to do that. Look at this last statement. Organizations really are responsible for safety, wellness, and mental health. And all those things have become so important with the COVID, and really still are. I was like having some kind of meltdown last week because just feeling like I never leave my house. And I need to get out. I need to see a sun. And for your own mental health, it's interesting. We kept checking in on each other, and that's a valuable lesson in the business too, to make sure you're checking in with your people and your customers. Okay. So how do we move forward? You know, look at other big economic events in American history. You can go back as far as, you know, the Depression in 1929, and, you know, what was the impact on jobs? It led to the Fair Labor Standards Act, which most of us moan about these days, but really it was designed to create more jobs, and that's exactly what it did. And it did not have the effect on small business that some people thought it would. What about compensation and benefit strategies that came out of all that? What came out of the recent recessions in 2008 and earlier ones? I mean, we have cycles, and we learn from those things. So we need to learn from the past and apply that, and not be scared of this future that we have. You know, we have things are going to happen. We have wars, we have depressions, we have pandemics. Your business can be resilient through that, but we have to learn from these things and be nimble. There's that nimble word again, and adaptable as we go through there. So let's talk about, so hopefully you're shifting your thinking, not about going back to the way it was, but embracing this new paradigm, this new way of working. And let's talk about the really big issue, the big gorilla that everyone is having to try to deal with, how we hire. So how many of you, I think this has a polling function, right? How many of you are having problems finding employees right now? If you, is there a way to do that? Let's see. Oh, no, I'm doing something wrong.
I'll try and build one.
Oh, okay. I love having somebody on here who knows what they're doing. I'm having problems getting the little bar to come up, which I don't understand that, but no, if I click on that, it goes to the next slide. So most businesses, I mean, it doesn't matter what industry, certainly if you're in retail, if you're in logistics, I notice some, I notice some of you are in nonprofits. Can everybody quickly go in here? Okay, so I guess my question would be, if you're not having problem hiring, is that because you're not hiring? I guess it depends on your industry too, and how many openings you have. Okay. In a typical employer group, the majority of people would say they're having problems finding people. One thing I want to say about that is that was true prior to the COVID-19. 2019, we were already seeing that. We were already predicting 6 to 10 million deficit in workers. I saw some statistics yesterday that said that there were 5 million more jobs than there were workers. So that makes sense to me because essentially, especially here in Jacksonville, we're at full employment, which means that anybody that wants a job, that's looking for a job, already has a job. So your 3 or 4% unemployment are not necessarily people looking. And so generally, as a nation, because we don't have a baby boom, we don't have the influx of people coming into the workplace, and now we're seeing the outgoing of people like baby boomers who have, you know, maybe did not retire during COVID because there was no place to go, are now starting to retire. We also have 700,000 people that died during COVID. So we have a lot of things, but really the biggest issue is we already had a deficit, the big tsunami deficit that was coming before that. So, you know, it's interesting when you look at, and you got to do this with a grain of salt, social media or media in general, you know, people really think it's because people are lazy and they're on unemployment and they don't want to work. I don't really think that's the case. I just think that this is catching up with us. So one of the things that we have to do is, when you're in the hiring mode, is to make sure that you don't just define the job, but you're also looking at the right fit, the skills, the personality traits, the diverse experience. And diversity is really critical moving forward in the world that we're entering. The ability to train, behaviors, all those things need to be looked at, not just the definition of the job tasks. And make sure that when you're in the hiring process, and 30% of you say you are currently, that you are considering more than just the skill set of the people, and that you're not over requiring those things. The same logistics client that I was talking about earlier was talking about getting people that drive forklifts, and their requirement was 3 years of forklift. Like 3 years of forklift. Like, how about 6 months of forklift or 3 months of, I mean, once you know how to do the forklift, do you really need 3 years of forklift driving to? So those are the kind of things that you have to question. I know some of your consultants question your clients about too, because over requiring also raises the price of that job. You need to make sure you have a recruiting and interviewing strategy that matches up with that right fit for you, your culture, what you're really looking for in a person, and that's going to be a part of your team. Everything is shifted in recruiting. So if you are doing recruiting the way that you've always done it, it's probably not going to work. Notice this first bullet here, art of the passive candidate. So like I said, there aren't lots of people out there that don't have a job. So you have got to attract people that already have a job, that aren't necessarily looking. And think about that. You know, if they're not looking, then you've got to be on the selling side, selling them on why they should consider your job. You know, the old, hey, do you know anybody that might be interested in an HR director for a $50 million company? You know, that old headhunter trick, and with the idea that they might be interested. And they might, because as we know, 80% of people are looking for new opportunities. Why is that? They're bored. They want to do something differently. They reassessed. They shifted in mentality during COVID, and they started thinking about wanting to do things differently. It's interesting. We got a resume from a guy that was a VP of HR, and we were recruiting for one of our clients for a VP of HR, and this guy had moved here from New York or something because of family, and his first question was, is it a remote position? I mean, this is a VP level guy. He doesn't want to go in the office. Big shift. I mean, in the past, that would have never have occurred. Social media contacts, we're seeing that advertising out there. That's a great way. Hey, does anybody know anybody that might be interested in an executive position or in accounting job, or I mean, really anything, a receptionist? You see that all out there on social media, and people will help each other, and that's a good free way to find people. LinkedIn is the new Indeed. When we were looking for someone with specific skill set, I Googled everybody in my 10,000 people I have that I'm connected to on LinkedIn, and went through them one by one, and then reached out to some of the ones that I thought might be a good fit for that. That's what you do on Indeed, but it is the new Indeed, especially for professional candidates. That big bold statement at the end of my slide is an important one. You're probably going to find the best people, but they're not looking. So that's a shift, and my crystal ball says it's not going to get any better. It may even get worse as more baby boomers retire, and we don't have any replacements. So you're going to have to learn this passive strategy of finding people, or get somebody to help you. This is a fun slide. How we think about recruiting I'm really guilty of this first box on the left, maybe a job hopper. I always look at somebody's resume and, oh, they've had a lot of jobs, right? Well, they stayed here a year, they stayed here 2 years. I don't know. They seem to jump around a lot. Well, we know, and we see a millennial age or maybe even Gen Y picture here on the screen. I've only had a few jobs in my whole career. That's not going to happen. And we know that. And so you've got to look at resumes differently where people have had a lot of jobs. Diverse interests and experience. This is one thing that you should look for. And I know I'm preaching somewhat to the choir since this is a Women's Business Center and SBA event, but a lot of people don't think that way. They're looking for people with the same kind of interests and experience as they are. And that's not good because our customers are diverse and we need diversity. I don't want people working for me that all agree with me, because guess what? Then I'm going to get myself into trouble. I need somebody that's going to think differently and look differently at different things. And that's really critical. We'll save remote work for a minute. Compensation more than money. So what are we talking about there? Well, I had a conversation with an organization that has a pension plan the other day. We have a great pension plan. I'm like, yeah, but if I don't have enough money to pay my $1,400 apartment rent, what good is a pension plan? You know, so the whole compensation, your whole total rewards has to be reviewed. And you have to know your audience. Somebody like me with gray hair may care about the pension and the 401k match. And that may be, I might be willing to give up some pay for that. But if you're young and you've got to buy furniture and you've got a baby and all these other things going on in your life, you're establishing yourself, I got to have cash so I can live. So that's really important. And also the benefit of like time off. We used to think that 2 weeks. Now I'm hearing people are offering 3 weeks to start. And if you don't offer 3 weeks, I've even seen that in letters coming back. I won't consider this job unless it has at least 3 weeks to begin with in PTO. So the flexibility, the ability to take time off, all those things are considered compensation and are going to become more and more important in the future. That flexible work hours. Well, can I work from home a couple days a week? Or can I, all those things. Now, how are you going to say they can't when essentially you've been doing that? The diverse skill sets are going to be critical for your business because of that adaptability thing. We've got to have people with diverse skill sets. If I have a consultant that can do compensation work, but also do organizational design and training, they're worth more to me than one person that all they can do is compensation. I need that flexibility because I don't know what projects are going to be coming in. Same thing with your business. The more diverse skills that the people have, the better off you're going to be. And we're going to have to do some training to get them those diverse skill sets. The flexible work hours and the remote work are really almost mandatory. And I realize there are some jobs, you know, working in hospitals and healthcare settings and retail and those kinds of places where remote work isn't possible. But as much as we can do to try to make things flexible, the better off we're going to do. So Brittany is asking, how do you showcase those diverse skills? And, you know, one of the things that as an employer you're going to want to do is make sure that everything, your website, your employment process, all of that, which we're going to talk about here in a minute, reflects your openness to diversity. And you have to go back to your job description and look at what you're requiring. And then for employees and people that you're already working, that are already working for you, making sure that you have an environment, and really training should be on here, where people know that you're going to help them get that diverse skill set through cross training and other things that you can do in your workplace. Doing something wrong here. Here we go. One of the things, and this is a diversity issue that I want to talk about, is expanding the talent pool. I think I saw a statistic, this was pre-COVID, but it's probably even more so today, that people with disabilities have about 20% unemployment. So if people have disabilities and you do have remote jobs, there's more opportunity, but it's going to require you to reach out to a different kind of talent pool, and go where people with disabilities are, whether it be agencies or just outright making sure that when you're recruiting, that you're emphasizing that you're open to that, because there's all kinds of great employees out there that either have physical disabilities or mental ones. I personally think the whole autism spectrum folks that don't have jobs, that's a terrible waste, because they make great employees. Other talent pools like new graduates. I talked to a guy the other day, and if anybody knows of an opportunity for this guy, he's working at one of the country clubs as a waiter. He just got a marketing degree. He has no idea how to get a job in marketing. He says, I don't care what I do. I'm a waiter right now. I'll do anything to get my foot in the door. He seems really smart, had a good GPA from school, nice personality. He'd make a great employee, but he has no experience. So guess what happens when he submits his application, and it just gets kicked out by all the algorithms. So you could focus on new graduates and reach out that way. Increase your workforce diversity by going to where diverse candidates are. I mean, we know that the Hispanic group is the fastest growing group. Do you have employees that are multilingual or bilingual, and going out and getting diversity in that way is another great way to tap into a different kind of talent pool. Notice second chance programs, depending on your business and whether you can do that or not, but felons, you want to be careful from an HR standpoint. Obviously, if you work with kids or the elderly, obviously you can't maybe employ felons, but you may have a business that could. And there's a lot of felons that are nonviolent that could be great workers. And that's a talent pool where the unemployment is much higher. So those are all things that you could look at to find people in the future. Back to that millennial thing again. You can see our diversity, and we put this on here. Our recruitment company has this diverse group of people that we have on our website, trying to attract millennials' need for movement. What does that mean? You got to be out there with a web presence and social media sites. you have to emphasize career pathing and training opportunities, because those are deal breakers for millennials. You can talk about mentorships. We have this in here as millennials, all about them, but it's really everybody right now. It's all about me. What do I need? What do I want? If I'm going to leave my job that I already have to come work for you, is it going to meet my needs? So how do we have to change our recruiting strategy to make sure it meets that. This is one that I really want to spend a little bit of time talking about. How do people apply with you, and what kind of experience they have? So maybe you're small, which you probably are, and you don't have, really sophisticated systems in place. Is it easy to apply for a job with you? Is it user friendly? Maybe it's totally manual, and that's okay, but is it quick? So let's say you put something out on Facebook that you're looking for a receptionist, and somebody says, hey, I know somebody, and you say, I'll instant message you. Do you send them an application and tell them to send it back to me and make it really easy to do that? Then when they send it back, when do you respond? Well, I'm a small business and I have 5 million things going on. Well, guess what? If somebody's looking for a job, any job, if you wait 3 or 4 days because you're covered up with things, they won't be there. They already had 4 other offers. And that's the market we're in right now. Example, my daughter, she worked for a company in Texas. She's in marketing. She worked remote for them during COVID. They hired her during COVID to work remote. Well, they decided they wanted everybody to come back into the office in Texas. And she said, I'm not moving to Texas. And they said, well, if you don't move, then you're fired. She said, fine, I'm done. And she quit. Within 2 weeks, she had 500 opportunities that she found to work remote. She had about 20 interviews and 5 job offers in 2 weeks. So this is what's happening right now for almost every job. And so you've got to be quick, prompt, clear. Make sure that candidate experience, everything you communicate to them. Oh, we're so excited you applied. And then make sure that you follow through on all that. You bring them into your office because they are going to work in the office or your cleaning business or whatever it is. You bring them in someplace. Are they greeted? Are people friendly? Does that feel good? Does it feel like a place somebody wants to work? Is it welcoming? What do they see? So I have this autistic 29-year-old, my son, and he got a job in a company where he was going to go in and work on a team of people it was a big warehouse to disassemble, I don't know, 5,000 computers into parts and put them in different bins. Perfect job for him. So I went with him to fill out his paperwork on the first day because he can't do it himself. And when I walk in there, they're printing things out off of the computer. They weren't prepared in the office and then handing them to me. And of course, I'm sure I'm intimidating since they knew I was an HR person, but I was like, this isn't the right form. They're printing the wrong forms out and handing them to me to fill out. Should I leave my autistic son here? He did work there for 8 months and all the other employees quit. And he single-handedly disassembled all the computers himself. And then when he was done, they laid him off because they didn't have any more computers. But the whole point is, what does it feel like to come into your place? What about the interviewers? Do you know, let's say you have employees that do interviewing. Do they know what they should ask? Do you know what you should ask? Are they asking inappropriate things or potentially illegal things? All that about the candidate experience is really important, because remember, in 2 seconds, they will put out on social media about their experience. And we want that to be positive. Here's some things that you need to add to your interview process. You might ask them, tell me about your role, how your role was impacted. We really want to have behavioral based questions that you ask. They can be, if you're going to hire a leader, you might ask them how they led a remote team. Tell us how you addressed communication problems. Tell me how you pivoted during the pandemic. Those are all things that are pandemic related. And the other thing is to ask behavioral based questions that put them in a scenario where it's not really easy to answer a pat answer. And you'll learn a lot about candidates from asking these kinds of questions, the way they think, the way they react from a stress standpoint, and quite frankly, whether they're going to be a lazy answerer, which I don't like. So if you ask them, give me an example of how you led your remote team, and they say, well, you know, we worked remote before, and so it was no big deal. I don't like that answer. What I want to hear is, well, one of the things we knew from people working remote, because we could not get together for meetings and things, we set up a regular schedule where we checked in with each other. You know, we built some more reports so that we could look for how people were coming with their milestones on their projects. And the other thing we did, and I'd really love this if I heard this, is that if we heard somebody that on our calls and on our Zoom meetings that seemed like they were stressed out, the minute we got off that call, I called them up and checked in with them. Now that's a really great answer on how they led their remote team. So you can see when you ask these, you're going to get a myriad of answers and really separate. Hopefully you have more than one candidate for jobs, and that will help you separate who you really want to hire. Okay, here I go. One of the things that we have to address in this new paradigm is employees have to feel good about working with you. Notice I didn't say working for you. You know, how satisfied are they? And because remember, 80% of them may be looking to do something different. Hopefully it's with you, and you can be looking for that and making sure they're challenged. But I mean, do they get to choose assignments? Even with our full-time consultants that work for us, when we have a new client, we call them up and we discuss the new client with them, and we let them have somewhat of a say. Sometimes we resort to begging. Please do this project. But most of the time we'll ask them, because we want them excited to work with the new client and feel like that they can be successful working with them. So freedom to choose assignments, making sure work is challenging enough. And we all have the tendency to go, we have our go-to people, and they get stuck with the same old stuff because we know we can count on them to do it. And that might not be a challenge, and that might not be fair. It's interesting, you know, I'm an extrovert, we have extroverts, we have introverts. The extroverts really need their social opportunities. Are we creating, you know, enough of the social opportunities for those people? What about the benefits? Do they meet the needs of the people? Are you like my client that has, you know, a retirement plan that nobody really cares about and not enough pay? The benefits need to fit your demographics of your people. You know, one of the things that you may be able to do if you're a small business is give them more PTO. If you're already paying them, and that's something that people really want, the work-life balance, promotional opportunities. They want to be able to see if you've got an exciting new company, you want to make sure they know what the possibilities are if the company grows and they are part of that growth. Flexible work arrangements, mentorships, making sure that you're giving them good feedback. And this is one I noticed at the beginning of the pandemic, I was really good. Like I have an executive assistant that I can't live without, right? But now she's working from her house. I'm working from my house. At the beginning of the pandemic, I'd be checking in with her every day, you know, how are you doing? What are we working on together, etc. Then I got so busy, I realized I'd been days and I didn't even talk to her. That's a problem. People want feedback. They want to feel good about it. You know, I'm looking at and see if anybody's dropped out of the call. You know, I need my feedback, right? Am I going fast enough? Am I going too slow? Is it interesting? I know I'm not being funny, but occasionally I can be. The financial rewards have to be there. That's almost like a given. So, you know, what can you do? You're a small business. You don't have a lot of money. Can you build incentives? Can you build bonuses? So if the company makes money, the people get money. Those are all things that people are looking for. They want to feel like they're part of something and they want to feel like they're going to be rewarded for that. Satisfied employees equal retention. You've got to also do this individually, right? Each employee's motivators, what engages them, what gets them excited, what will make them want to stay, and build that into your culture. You know, at the same time, well, Susie, you're an HR person, you got to be consistent. Well, yes, you do, but also there's different individual needs that people have, and you've got, and how are we going to find that out? Well, how about just ask them, right? That's the most brilliant advice I give today. Ask people. So this is an individual activity. Just write down on a sheet of paper, or if you're like me, you write it on a sheet of paper. If you're like other people, put it in your phone or your computer. What do you need to do? What do you need to do right now so that your people are engaged and committed to staying? And if you want to share one of your solutions, you can put it in the chat. I'll just give you a minute here because I'm noticing that I'm getting behind on my slide deck, which I have a tendency to do. I'll just share one of mine, and that is to talk to people about it. You know, what are you looking for in 2022? Making sure that I have a meeting with all my direct reports relative and all the way down through the organization. You know, what are your goals for 2022? And how can I, as your boss, or the company as a company, help you to achieve those goals? And it might be a 15-minute meeting for some people. Yeah, of course, you might have somebody that's going to be an hour meeting or whatever, but block that out and ask them, because that's going to be the best way to know. All right. Some things that you can do: flexibility, flex scheduling. Make sure you define it, have a policy. what days and hours. People are doing this. They're saying you have to be in the office Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, but Monday and Friday are optional. Or we're going to have core hours from, 10 to 3. And you can, you have to be in the office for, you can do all kinds of different flex scheduling depending on your business. PTO plans. Think about what you can afford to do with that. And it's really important that you do not, I'm going to call it nickel and dime people on PTO. That's what we mean by don't sweat the small stuff. I don't care if you're really sick or whether you're just not here, because I have 15 days of PTO a year and you can use it for whatever you want, right? We get all hung up. They're faking being sick. I saw them on Facebook. They were, out dancing the night before. Okay. We decide what you can give and give it. Work from home arrangements. You've got to have a definition of what that means and policies. And don't forget, you need to have things in place to make sure that work is getting done, not through micromanagement, but through reporting on results, managed by results on work from home arrangements. And make sure your policies are clear. Is it okay for the dogs to be barking, the naked children running behind us on Zoom? What's allowed and what isn't, and which positions will that be allowed for? And think that through ahead of time. Make sure you've got a work atmosphere that fosters respect. You'd think that would be an easy thing. But we've all worked at places where that didn't occur, including me. And because of that, we have an opportunity, especially all of you, to create an atmosphere of respect. Train on things like diversity and sexual harassment, and make sure that goes on. There's not a day that goes by that there isn't something out there about harassment. There's a maritime, today it was the Maritime Training Institute. They send people out and they train them. They go out on ships, merchant marine ships. They had some women that went out on these ships and were raped. They're shutting down the program. What are they doing to the people that are on these ships in management? What kind of training are they doing, and how are they preparing, and how are they dealing with some of those things? Make sure you have atmosphere where all ideas are welcome. You can do focus groups, you can do employee surveys. You need to work on culture. Part of culture is praise, recognition. Hit the magic number. There was a study done on millennials. Anybody want to guess what their magic number was on praise? I think it was like every hour or something. And then you got baby boomers. I'm a baby boomer. I only give praise for things that are praiseworthy, right? Praiseworthy things, not doing your job. So I have to force myself, right? Force myself to say, good job. And I really like the way you did that brochure, or you hit it out a home run with that client, or whatever. The magic number is different for different people. Some people need more and some people need less. It's free, folks. It's free. Make the recognition personal. If you give somebody something that they don't appreciate, that's like a negative recognition, right? I keep telling my daughter who has children, what gets recognized gets repeated. So be careful of bad behavior. If you give a lot of attention to bad behavior, that bad behavior may continue. Make it timely and often. Don't dilute your thanks. So don't excuse your thanks. Don't make sure that you are specific, not just good job, kind of the pat the dog on the head kind of thing, because that's kind of meaningless. Good job because I really like the way you put together that brochure, the pictures that you chose and the wording. It was just awesome, right? That's much better than good job on the brochure. And you want to foster an environment where peers will praise each other, and not only just your bosses, but also your employees. I've kind of been saying this all along, but diversity as a competitive, you know, your diverse team needs to reflect your market. Or the market that you're looking to go into. So I mentioned the Hispanic market, fast growing Hispanic market. But do you have anyone Hispanic on your team? Do you have anyone that speaks Spanish on your team? Those kinds of things. That diversity, using that example, allows for some cultural insight that you may not have. And it may offer you opportunities you don't currently have. The other piece about culture in general is making sure that it's welcoming to anyone, and different religions, different races, different sexual orientations, all those diversity factors create a better team, and you become known as an employer of choice when you have that openness. And I will tell you, so, we're all prejudiced in some way. I mean, we know that. The thing about diversity for me is, maybe as a company, because of your size or what you do, you don't have a government mandate that requires different diverse things. Your employees will require it. The employee of the future, say you don't believe in any of this, the employee of the future, young people, they don't want to work for a company that's not diverse, that doesn't have an openness. I'll never forget, we were watching some show on TV, and I think he was about 29. My 29-year-old son was sitting on the couch with me, and he goes, I don't understand why anybody cares where somebody's gay or a woman or a minority. He says, why don't they just look at whether they can do the job or not? It's so simple, right? I'm like, yes, I did something right. And don't forget about the diversity of thought, people that think differently than you. I've had some great things that have come out of that. I thought they were the most horrible, stupid ideas, and then we implemented them and they turned out to be great because I was coming from my background and my employees were coming from their background. So that curiosity and experience pays off. Make sure your employees have access to senior leadership. That old adage that, the CEO make an appointment kind of thing doesn't apply anymore. Not only just physically that they can talk to you, but also mentally, that you're a person, maybe you're the owner of the business, that you're a person that people can come and talk to. Soliciting input. Make sure your management solicits input and acknowledges and appreciates the people. Make sure you're giving them that high level of direction they need. Make sure that there's bite-sized wins. So that goes back to kind of this time of year where we're setting our goals and planning. Make sure you're not setting the goals so loftily that no one can achieve those. And just like what happened to us in COVID, make sure there's regular check-ins. And if you can't check in person, maybe you have remote people. I have an employee now in New Jersey. We're just hiring somebody in Colorado. I have one in Missouri. ask them for a Zoom call so you can see them and they can see you smiling at them, and make sure you're smiling, because I always scowl when I'm on the Zoom calls. I don't know why, but I've tried to make sure my eyes are smiling as well as my mouth. Honest about themselves. People appreciate humility, admitting they're wrong when they're wrong. If you have management that works for you that doesn't do that, I'd almost say get rid of them. I mean, I would say that. People like to work for real people. And make sure management's asking for feedback. Okay, here's that fair thing. Of course, an HR person have to throw that in. Enforce the policies for everyone. So you've got to have policies. Management has to set the example. And this is hard. Why should I work so hard when the person next to me barely shows up and never gets into trouble? Well, just worry about your own self and not your neighbor, right? But the reality is they do worry about that. So make sure setting clear expectations and that you're following through on what you're saying to everyone else. Make sure you're training good leaders and making sure you have a respectable workplace. And I can't say enough about being a good model. It's interesting, the mask thing. I noticed we've been going up to our new office to inspect painting and all that kind of thing. And there's a tendency to get a little lax, like if you have a mask policy, make sure you're wearing the mask and you're following through on that. I'll diverge for a minute. Our church required masks, and then for a period of time when the numbers went really down low, they didn't require masks. I kept wearing my mask because I still had 2 kids that hadn't been vaccinated. And I had people come up to me and ask me, why are you wearing your mask? So, well, because I have people in my family that aren't vaccinated, and I do not want to take a chance that they're going to get sick. It's important that you model good behavior. And let's say you have a bad meltdown day and you don't model good behavior, then you own it and you apologize to people. People respect that. And that's really important in the workplace. You've got to invest in your workers' training, mentorships. It doesn't have to be a big fancy program, but they have to see a career path. They have to be able to see that they're going to be learning new skills and moving along in their career. Other than that, they're going to go somewhere else. And make sure that you've got an ongoing conversation about development. It's a perfect time to talk to them about what they want to do and from a developmental perspective in 2022. I talk a little bit about this transparency. You can see I'm transparent. Your management needs to be transparent. You've got to have ongoing communication and education. If the company is having issues, it's okay to tell people. Now you've got to balance that with, you don't want it so bad unless you want them to leave. If you're having issues in your company, you might want to tell them what you're doing and ask for their help. What can we do? We've had certain blips in our company where we didn't have enough business. We got everybody around a table. This is pre-COVID, but around the table and said, okay, what do we need to do to get revenue up? What new products can we do? And some of those products I didn't even agree with, right? Because they came from younger people. And I thought, well, I've already tried something like that before and it didn't work, but it did work. And that's important. Ongoing communication. Be upfront about your education. Be upfront about pay. Can you pay more? We can pay more when we get to the next milestone in terms of revenue. Share what you can when you can. Obviously, it's a balancing act on this, not to share too much, but not to share too little. And you've got to share, where is the company headed? I always see that. I have no idea where the company's going. I see that on employee surveys that we do for companies. I have no idea where this company is headed. Why not? They should know. You want them to be part, because if we're all moving in the same direction, we're more likely to get there. We're not going to spend much more time. I mean, I'm really been pushing the diversity thing. I didn't mention, though, and is on this slide, generational differences. One thing I noticed in my business, because basically consultants are typically, I don't want to say old, but I think our average age was 50-ish, because that's kind of the natural place to be a consultant. And I recognize that that ends up not being very diverse in thought. And so we purposely look to have some diversity of generations in our company. Now, the way it ends up in a consulting firm like ours is you end up with like the 20 somethings in the administrative support area. But I've been including some of them in discussions of looking at marketing and looking at some of our products, just to get kind of the younger perspective on that. So mixing up your generational practices is really important, and making sure that you just don't have that one mindset of people in every aspect. All right. So we've got about 30 minutes left, and we want to talk about pay, because that is such a hot issue right now. So what has happened? We had the stay-at-home orders, then we had some financial support from the government that was wonderful. Then we thought in May, we're going to flatten the curve, right? And that was the big push. We're going to flatten the curve. In December, the support ended, and we had the emergency use vaccines, and we thought, yay, and they become available. And we started talking about having them be mandatory, which today's big news from a COVID HR standpoint is the 100+ employer requirement of vaccination and all the nuances of that. And if you are an employer of 100 or more employees, make sure you email me after, and I can get you a link. I know we will be doing a webinar on all that and all the nuances of it. We really had high hopes, in the spring, and then we had the Delta variant, and then we have global supply chain, and a lot of planned return to work dates had been abandoned. During all of this, you might have been in a business that didn't get financial support, or your business was in the toilet, and you had to lay people off, or you had to reduce pay. A lot of organizations, airline industry, retail, restaurants, all were in that bucket. And you may still be in that bucket. And then we have others that have been booming, like healthcare and of course, logistics, and that whole supply chain issue where everything gets delivered to your door like 8 boxes a day of boxes of stuff. Anybody have that? So all of this has an impact on pay, how we pay, how much we pay, who we pay. And it's dependent on your industry, the size of your business, your employee makeup, whether you're an essential service or not. Are you frontline jobs? Is there remote capacity? Do you have the ability to distance from customers? The customer-driven nature of your business, and of course, the supply chain. All of those things are impacting pay right now. And it is a feeding frenzy out there. If you haven't experienced it, you are very lucky. and you will experience it. Employees are going to be coming to you asking for more pay if they haven't already done that. So what are your top 3 compensation concerns? And I'm going to keep moving, but I want you to put that in the chat. I'll give you a second there to think, so you don't miss out on my waxing poetic on this. But there isn't any one size fits all solution to it because of all those things that we just talked about. All those different things that affect it. So do you have compensation concerns right now? What are those? If you could put those in the chat, that would be great. Oh, shoot, I keep doing that. Oh, well. All right, is everybody like nodding off here? I know it's dinner time. How to balance wage compression and a need to increase wages with the cost of everything rising as well. Huge issue. I have this issue myself in my business, and we were talking about this actually in a strategic planning meeting yesterday about raising our fees, which we already did. I mean, we raised our fees during the pandemic because all of our expenses were being raised. So those are things, you know, I always say we got to look at the business model, and we'll be talking to that as we go through this section. So you might have no money for raises or bonuses this year. I was pleasantly surprised that Blue Cross only raised my benefits expense 3%, but you might have gotten a 20% benefit increase in your benefits. You may not have any financial strength. Your current pay might be behind the curve prior to COVID. And then because of cost of living increases, because of inflation, you're not going to have any choice but to raise pay, or you won't have any people. And that's something we haven't dealt with for at least 15 years, because we've been on this 2 to 3% increase kind of mode that kept up with our 2 or 3% inflation. And people were able to give really small increases to people, and that's not the case anymore. Have you seen the price of bacon? I can't figure out why pigs are worth so much these days. But anyway, you know, meat in general, beef, pork, everything is just so high. Everything goes up. Every time I go to the grocery store, it's more and more and more. Well, people have to be able to eat, people that work with you. So we're going to be looking at COLAs, cost of living increases in the future. Then we have a minimum wage going up. Of course, everybody knows $10 is the minimum wage in Florida right now, with a schedule to go up to $15 in the next few years. You're not going to be able to wait. I mean, I don't know anybody that can pay $10 now. And because of that, all the way through your structure, all your people, you've got to look at that, or you have that pay compression, which one of the people mentioned. And the competition for talent means, because there aren't enough workers, we have 6 to 12 million deficit of workers. Guess what? I'm going to go to the highest bidder. You know, if you pay me $1 more an hour or $2 more an hour, I'll come work for you. And that is the competitiveness that's going to be going on in the future and currently. So what can we do? What's all right. Doom and gloom, Susie, doom and gloom. Okay, let's talk about solutions. Well, you got to be competitive. If you don't know where you stand in the market, you need to figure that out. And what's your strategy? Do you need to pay market? Do you need to pay above market? Can you get away with paying below market? I got a great culture. I can pay a little bit below market. You need to have a strategy about this. Pay is not necessarily the most important thing. But like I said, you got to be able to pay for rent, which is really ridiculously high these days. You got to pay for your electricity. You got to have your car. And of course, you have to have the fanciest, latest and greatest smartphone, which this is not the latest and greatest. This is like a 7. And I'll keep using it till I die, but it dies or I die. But young people want the latest and greatest. So it's not important, but it's up there. You got to use maybe third-party resources to find out what market is. Do not use salary.com online. Salary.com online is reported by people. And if you've ever been to a barbecue where somebody was bragging about how much they made, it probably wasn't the truth. So the accuracy of salary.com is not that great. Keep in mind that your employees are educated. They're going to go on salary.com or they're going to Google it and come in with a 40-page report to show you how you're only paying them 60% of what they deserve. So you've got to stay on top of this and make sure you educate employees about pay and your ability to pay, and make sure you're paying what they're worth. Couple things you can do. You know, let's look at the right side first. You can give people incremental raises, which is typical, like a merit raise, but that is a long-term commitment. And if you don't have the money to pay, make it meaningful, you may want to do a lump sum because you're going to give it all to them. So you might want to think about that right now. If I don't have the money for a decent raise, maybe I give them their raise in a lump sum. So I've got 3%. I just did this with a not-for-profit. The person, they budgeted 3%. That's all they could give them. They wrote them a check for $1,000. That has a lot more impact than 3% over the course of a year. I mean, it's minuscule, right? And they can't even see it in their paycheck. So the lump sum is an option. That's also an option if you have people that you consider overpaid, because it doesn't add to the base, and it gives you some flexibility. Incremental, you know, it's more controlled. There's less perception of discrimination or favoritism, and it rewards employees for performance over time. But if you're looking at very small increases at this point in this marketplace, you might want to think about lump sums. Everywhere you look, there's hiring bonuses. You know, my people put some latest and greatest ones in here. Material handler, $500 for this rubber company, $25 an hour. A cable technician, sign-on bonus, $500. I know the Ruby Tuesdays on Fleming Island, right up here, they have a signing bonus right on their big gigantic, and it's gigantic, right there on 220 sign. Everywhere you look, you see. Go to the Jaguar game, JTA, $10,000 signing bonus for drivers. I asked the head of HR for JTA about it. $15,000 is the signing bonus if you have a CDL, and $10,000 if you don't. That got my attention. Like, maybe I should be a bus driver, right? So everywhere you look, you see that. Now, you can use those to your advantage, but you want to make sure you're smart about it. Now, JTAs, it's over a 3-year period. So you're not going to get all 15,000 the first day you work there, and you don't want to do it that way because Okay, I don't like it here. I already got my $1,000 or whatever you're going to do, 250, and I'm gone. Build in milestones. What are your competitors doing? Is that something that you need to look at? That's very important. And I don't think these are going to go away anytime soon. Pay incentives. This is a great variable pay is a great thing that you can use. More companies are moving to it. Giving instant recognition. Make sure that it's not for a whole year. You want to make sure that it's on, because people are short-term oriented. Even a small amount has an impact. And that's one way to get people excited and moving in the same direction. Make sure it's a line of sight. There's something they can impact. Identify those key performance areas that you can tie to the strategy, and incentivize them for meeting or exceeding it. And it puts some control in the employee's hands, and they like that. You know, there's, I'm not going to read you these, but there's a bunch. You could have productivity bonus. You can, you know, referral, like if they get their base pay for mowing lawns, but if they get people saying how wonderful they are on social media, you give them some money. You know, maybe extra money for cross training or working an extra shift. Lots of different things that you can do in that area. One thing that I want to talk about is you may have hot jobs. That's what I call them, hot jobs. So hot jobs are those that maybe are critical to your business. We see in the past, we've seen this in IT where people have parallel structures where they had to jump pay very in great amounts because of what was happening in the market. And you may want to plan on evaluating those or using more of your salary dollars for those hot jobs. They might be high turnover jobs. And then you would do a carve out from your existing pay structure for those jobs. But if you have limited dollars, you may only want to use your extra dollars for those hot jobs because it's critical to your business. So pay increases, merit, you might need to make compression changes, market adjustments, cost of living. If they get more skills, you give them a pay increase or increased responsibility. One of my recruiters took this picture at Chick-fil-A. It's up there. This Chick-fil-A was up in a rural area near Callahan, $19 an hour. Now, I've been thinking about this a lot. And then, you know, like I said, I live on Fleming Island. I drive by the Chick-fil-A there a lot. Their volume of business, I don't think I ever drive by there. There aren't 2 full lanes wrapped around the building of people buying their food. They probably can afford the $19 an hour, and they can get the best employee because of that. And they are the most efficient place, fast food restaurant that you've ever seen. It used to be McDonald's was like that. Now they're slower than slow, right? But think about competing with $19 an hour. I know one of you is a consultant to nursing homes. How are you going to compete with that? I can work at Chick-fil-A, not work on Sunday, have Sundays off, make $19 an hour, or I can work cleaning up poop and vomit and everything in a nursing home for 15 or less. That's telling us something about where this market is going. Okay. Don't forget other stuff. Benefits. Benefits are important to people. Time off, very important. Training. Training is mandatory. You've got to train people. You've got to show them that you're going to train them. And that might be as simple, not necessarily expensive training where you're sending them to conferences and things, but it might be inexpensive, like training them on a new skill. You could look at discount programs and co-oping with other people. And of course, the flexible schedule. All those things are part of pay and total rewards. What is pay compression? That's Notice our squeezing of the dollar, where there's little difference between pay for employees. You know, the new guy's making $10 an hour. The guy that's been there for a year's making $10 an hour. That's a problem. The supervisor's making 12 and working 50 hours a week. That's a problem. Make sure you're looking for all that and have a plan to do something about it. So it can be between new and tenured employees, managers and their direct reports, between levels of position, and it can be caused by a lot of things. And it can lead to a lot of problems, including legal risk, as well as productivity and loss. Like I said, here's the schedule in Florida for minimum wage. I think that if you can get through 2022 without having paid $15 minimum wage, you're doing something. I don't see that happening. Remember the Chick-fil-A sign, and my front favorite, Buc-ee's. If you don't want to know what I'm talking about, take a field trip to Buc-ee's in St. Johns County. Look at what they have on all their doors, at the pumps, everywhere, in terms of how they pay and what they give employees. That's the competition. You can do sweeping increases to all people. You can reorganize your job duties to justify the increases. You can lay people off, get rid of your dead wood, reorganize your jobs, variable pay, shift your structures over time, but you better address this. And you better be looking at your pricing model and your revenue model and making sure that you're not getting behind on how much you're charging your customers, because you're going to have to do this at some point. I got a pitch in here, a subtle pitch. Jackie, is that subtle pitch okay? You know, you may need a third-party review like what our company does, so you don't have bias and it's defensible in what you're doing with your pay. Oh, I do have the Buc-ee's slide. Here we go, Buc-ee's. Look at that. 15 to 17 to start, cashier, food service, gift, or warehouse. Stand there, check people out, smile, be friendly, 15 to 17 bucks an hour. Notice the bottom, 40 and plus hour work weeks, healthcare, 401k, 3 weeks paid time off, use it, cash it, roll it. Walmart, 18 bucks, 15, Starbucks, 15, summer of 22, they're going to jumping to 17. We have got to think about, as business owners, this impacts me too. I have administrative people. What are you going to do? Have a plan and be able to address that. Now the future of work in the next 12 minutes. What is this what's happening? What's coming next? 25% of workers are going to need to change occupations. What are those drivers of change? Where did the workers go? Well, they're delivering those packages to your front porch that you keep ordering from Amazon Prime. Free shipping. Free shipping. 7 packages a day. No wonder there's a shortage of cardboard. E-commerce. Booming, booming, booming. People start their own little e-commerce businesses. Automation. Kiosks everywhere. Go in Walmart. There's 3 people to check you out with your gigantic basket of food, and you have to go to the ends and check it out yourself. Do it yourself. Automation. Needed skills are changing. We're going to have some industries that are going to be decimated. You've got to design your jobs with the right mix of automation and people. You've got to change your thinking about the nature of work. And what I mean by that, I mean on the most simplistic level, think about how you have your job structured. Focus on tasks, not the whole job. What task could be done remotely? Because if we can hire people remotely, just like me, I got somebody in New Jersey, I got somebody in Colorado, I got somebody in Missouri. My Missouri person is call center person for my helpline. The guy in New Jersey is a compensation analyst. He can work remote. I just hired another compensation analyst in Colorado because I can't find any in Jacksonville. They don't need to be here. I don't need to watch them. They don't need to come to the office. What can we do differently? What tasks do your people do that could be done remotely? Because you can open up the whole country, which you're going to need to do because there's a limited number of workers. Don't only look at the whole job. Think about how you can restructure jobs. What are transferable skills or portable skills? The abilities a candidate can transfer from one job to another. What are those? And you need to identify those for your company. I love this. Chick-fil-A manager donated his drive-through to help the vaccination program. It's interesting. We did a drive-through Thanksgiving at our church, and I used the Chick-fil-A concept to design the drive-through to make it efficient. And we got like 100 cars through our drive-through in like 30 minutes, delivering them their orders of Thanksgiving. So it's interesting. That's definitely a transfer. That's a great example of transferable skills. Jobs that are going to be growing, obviously transportation, STEM jobs, health, green jobs, photographers, because everything's going to be done online. You got to have pictures, training instructors, business and legal, warehousing, trucking, transportation, cybersecurity. Don't we know that? IT, elder care, everybody's getting older, nursing. Jobs that are going to be declining, low-level office support, because that's going to be automated, or people are going to have to do it themselves. Customer service, because you're not going to be going into places, you're going to be ordering online. Sales, because sales, everything is moving in sales. Sales is going to be done differently. Production, food services, business travel. We're already seeing a gigantic reduction in that. Some hot jobs. Work from home facilitator, fitness commitment counselor. Okay, you're sitting on your butt at home like I've been doing. I need a commitment counselor. Smart home designer. That's why home and all the trades are booming. I don't like the way my house is painted or structured, or I'm going to redo it. All these things. How about cyber calamity forecaster? That's a scary one. Human machine teaming manager. You can go to this. You're all going to get this Forbes article that talks about this and see what all this means. Reskilling, allowing employees to earn similar or higher pay. High paying non-degree positions have been impacted. We got to determine jobs that we can combine, look at fluidity of skills and promotions and ways that we can internally plan for all of this. Externally, what about additional schooling? Well, we might not have time to wait for this, but we better get a plan in place for the future on it. Soft skills are going to be really critical, and they already are in terms of customer service and flex. We're seeing a lack. I don't know if you're seeing it. I'm seeing it everywhere. A lack of customer service, and of course, technology skills. Remote work, hybrid job models, big term, trendy term, hybrid. 25 or 30% of the workforce will work from home 3 to 5 days a week. Hybrid kind of implies they work at home and they work at someplace else. Work geography is going to change. If you can work remote, I can work in small cities. I can live in small cities and suburbs. I don't have to live in large cities. So we're going to be shifting back to the suburbs, opening up recruiting to anywhere. And because of the way Florida is going to be booming, it's just an opportunity for us as entrepreneurs. We're going to have multi-state employment, like I've been talking, and we're not going to have the expense of relocation if people don't need to relocate. So that's all the good news. What do I mean by work-life balance? Balance is dead. Well, they don't want balance. They want a life, right? Mental health, worker well-being, whole life balance is going to be the critical thing. And we've got to make sure we're limiting. I keep hearing of people that get text messages on these darn things at 1 o'clock in the morning from their employer, and it wakes them up. Nobody wants to live like that. Leaders have to control, and you got to control your leaders. Set the example yourself. Focus on the employee and their family. We're really busy right now. One of my employees went on a field trip today. I asked them how the field trip was. And then I asked them the 15 questions I needed to ask them when they got back from the field trip. And that's important. And of course, we need to remove the stigma of mental health, and there's plenty of stuff out there on that. Teaming, and we know teaming is a big, huge concept in the Small Business Administration. It's going to be a differentiator. And think of teaming in every aspect. Teaming super teams of technology and people in order to scale at a rapid speed. And that means you're going to have a lot of soft skills and a lot of technology skills. And super teams that you can put together rapidly are going to be a competitive advantage. Remote work, a few things that I have to mention as an HR person. And oh, Susie, you're such a killjoy. You got to make sure you're paying the people correctly. If you don't have a physical time clock, how do you know when they're working? Making sure you're paying for all their time. I know I work a lot more hours since working at home. I'm like sitting here and finally I look up and it's 6:20 and I'm like, oh crap, I need to quit work. Your workers may be doing that too. You've got to make sure that you have a way to pay them. What about workers' comp? They still can get hurt at home. And of course, substance abuse and reasonable suspicion, make sure you have good policies around that. Politics and compliance, there's going to be more laws and regulations. Equal pay is going to be demanded by employees, so you can't ignore that. And like I said before, whether or not things are legislated in terms of worker rights and freedoms, the workforce of the future is going to demand it. So you've got to be ahead of that game. Make sure you have your disaster planning and your continuity in place, whether that's cybersecurity or weather policies and safety plans, and of course, our pandemic plan. Other big changes coming, more contingent workers, more processes being outsourced. Housing market is going to continue to be small. If you're in that real estate business, you're in a good place. Labor market, it's going to shift rapidly, both globally and domestically, with the availability of skilled talent. People may need to go offshore because they can't get the talent here. Tiny businesses are going to flourish. So that's good for us as entrepreneurs. And ethics is always going to be on the agenda. So those are all things that are coming. I'm going to go through this slide, and then if anybody has questions, I can stay on here and answer them, or you can also email me. Think about what you learned in your business from the pandemic. Let's learn from what we did right and what we didn't do right. Embrace the changes and make sure we make smart, permanent changes based on those things. But we also need to think strategically. What is that larger picture of the future of work based on the industry you're in and your personal situation? What's happening? How can we get ahead of that? Employees, jobs, and the way we work, it's forever changing. There is no static. Make sure you rethink your talent strategies, reskilling, retraining, rethinking how you're doing that, and make sure you're doing that with a diversity, equity, and inclusion lens. And pay, you cannot ignore this. If you ignore it, you may be dead. You may not have a business. You've got to address compression concerns. You have to make sure you have a strategy and a pricing model that's going to support that part of your business. It doesn't do any good to say, I'm going to raise pay, but you don't have the revenue to support it. So you've got to think through, what do I need to change in my pricing models in order to pay for what I know is coming or is already here? Make sure you're partnering with the right people. You have the right trusted advisors, so you can grow in the right way to get the best outcome. All right, I've got about a few minutes here. So I'm looking, Elizabeth also put something in here. Saw someone complaining on social media that Buc-ee's makes them stand up their entire shift for $17 an hour. Well, you're always going to have people, right? You know, that are going to, maybe Buc-ee's will give them stools. You never know. Based on that feedback. It's so interesting. I really do recommend a field trip there. The environment is high energy. It is. Have you been there, Jackie? She's shaking her head.
Yes,
Yes.
I've been there.
And
I enjoyed it.
it's designed in that way, and it was fun. It's fun to go in there. And I was looking at, I don't know, chips or something. I stopped there on my way back to Orlando, and I thought I'll just do a field trip here. And I was looking at the chip section, and they had a bunch of weird stuff. And I wasn't standing there still for maybe 30 seconds, and somebody came over. Can I help you find anything? You know, very customer service oriented, very positive. It had a good vibe, and we want to have that for our businesses. Lots of stuff, and we don't know what else is coming down the pike. These are things we do know about, and we need to be ready for and strategize now about it. And you need to be thinking about that for 2021 too. 2021 is almost over, believe it or not. It's hard to believe. And if I can help you in any way, if you have questions that you want to ask me that you didn't want to ask in front of everybody, please email me. Happy to help you in any way I can. I love the entrepreneurial community here in Jacksonville, and I want to make sure we thrive.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Susie. We truly appreciate it. And like she mentioned, we'll take any questions now. So if anybody has some questions related to their business, anything that we covered today, please put that in the chat. And with that, if we don't see anything come through, just a reminder for those who may be logged on late, we have the online classroom. So we will post the recording as well as the copy of the presentation in our online classroom. So you'll get an email tomorrow with that. Thank you all for being here.
Well, thank you, Jackie, for this opportunity. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you so much, Susie.
All right.
We appreciate you and your time and all of your information, as always.
All right. I'll stay on for a couple minutes here.
Seeing some thank yous. If you have any questions, it's your time.
I'm sure everybody's ready to go eat some dinner.
All right, well, there is a feedback form as well once we log off. So you'll see that pop up on your screen. Take a moment to do that as well. We share that with our facilitators. And thank you all. Have a great night.
Bye, everyone.